Welcome back to the King Exchange. I am Sean King. If you have been near Icon Park lately, you might have seen a Jaguar driving itself. No driver, no hands on the wheel, just sensors and software. In April, Mayor Buddy Dyer took the first official ride to kick off the Waymo launch here in Orlando. It looked great on the news, but was it a vision of the future or just another high tech PR stunt? One local user of the Waymo app recently reported that a ride from Icon Park to SeaWorld cost just $14.95 and took about 20 minutes. It is convenient, but here's the catch. These autonomous vehicles mostly stay on surface streets. They avoid I 4, they avoid airport access, they are largely confined to the heavy tourist areas where the streets are pretty and the money is flowing. That leads us to the big question for today. Does this actually solve anything for the taxpayers living in the sprawling bustle of Orlando? Or are we just building a high tech bubble for tourists while the rest of us sit in gridlock? Today, we are looking at the roadmap for Orange County. We are talking about the Sunshine Corridor and why the Orange Blossom Express is currently a ghost project. We are looking at a $400 million LYNX budget that still struggles with basic bus shelters. Most importantly, we are asking how we actually pay for all of this after the transit tax failed in 2022. To help me pull back the curtain, I am joined by the Jane Washington leadership team. David Washington is here to look at the business impact of these plans. Kellen Clark joins us to break down the infrastructure reality, and Kevin Dufresne has the community pulse. And I also hear he is here to break down some recent developments. So let us start with the robot in the room, Waymo.
Yes.
Waymo is officially open, and thank you for joining me, everybody. Welcome.
Yes.
Waymo is officially open to the public in a 60 square mile radius, but as I mentioned, it is very focused on the tourism district. Um, I would like to first start off by asking David, when we see the mayor um, taking a ride in a right, but one short trip from one park to SeaWorld costs $15 and takes 20 minutes. Is
I'm sorry, Sean, you're frozen there. However, I think I may know what the question is, so I'll just kind of carry on. Okay, you're back, Sean. Uh, I think I get the gist of your question. So if I'm going in the wrong direction, please let me know. However, I'm excited by the introduction of Waymo to the Orlando area. It has been something that is long overdue, in my opinion. I am a big fan of Google products. Waymo is a Google or Alphabet incorporated entity. The technology LiDAR is used in the autonomous driving system. Um, I think it's wonderful. Right now, although Waymos are not on I-4 or available at the airport, we are in the beginning stages of a new means of autonomous driving here in Orlando. I see them often. I've pulled up to several recently, and I'm just amazed by the technology. I am just very happy that we've got to this point here in Florida, with here in Central Florida with the Waymos. What I'm even more excited is the introduction of Tesla's robo taxis that will be coming to or have come to Orlando, not in full force like the Waymos. However, they are coming, and these robo taxis are specifically built for this type of transportation, moving people like an Uber or Lyft. There's no steering wheel. It's a two-seater. and it's built for durability. And I'm really excited for that to be introduced to the market, thus lowering the cost, hopefully, because of competition of Waymos versus robotaxis. I believe from the information that I've read, robotaxis will be about maybe 20 cent, 20 cents, 25 cents for moving people, 20 cents per mile. That's the cost. And so I think we're going to see a revolution in the hailing, car hailing, food delivery system. This is great for elderly who are unable to drive, or those with disabilities who are unable to drive. This is going to be a great introduction to our community, and I believe it's the wave of the future. I'm embracing it.
And I see what you're saying there, but my the crux of the issue here,
Mhm.
um, if these autonomous networks are avoiding I-4 and the airport and focusing more on the touristy areas of Orlando, which are outside, you know, the main hub for Orlando residents, are they actually contributing to the regional economy, or are we creating a two-tiered transportation system where the tourists get the the tech and the residents get the traffic? Is this something that
Actually, Sean, Waymo has expanded to all of Orlando. I'm not too sure if
It just doesn't work on major highways, but some other areas, a couple areas, like believe they have them in Hunters. I believe they still have them in Hunters and a couple other
Hunter's
spots.
Creek, I've seen them in Oak Ridge, I've seen them all over the county.
in Paramore,
Uh, I've
but
seen them in Paramore. Yes, I've seen them in Paramore. I've seen them on Colonial. I've seen them on Cimarron. And yes, they just recently opened up the entire Orlando market, Orange County market for Waymo. There's a lot of them on John Young. There's a hub right off of Orange and Trayport that when I'm in the southern portion of the county and I'm driving north or south on Orange, I see a bunch of Waymos charging in their little hub. So they're everywhere, and not just the tourist area.
I want to
and
address the main concern of that question, which is that like obviously it's kind of more currently oriented towards tourism. I think that's part of the opportunity here because the main issue with traffic, I feel like in Orange County and Orlando as a whole, is the tourism. Like the areas where there's like heavy tourist concentration are the worst areas to drive in. I mean, like I was on I-4 a couple days ago, and the main places where it slowed down was Champions Gate, Lake Buena Vista, and then by the time you hit downtown, it's really not that bad. And then past downtown, like I was on 417 coming back to UCF, it was beautiful. And this is middle of the day on a Tuesday. This is not this is like a very standard time. Um, so what the Waymos and like other robotaxis offer is a way to get the tourists off of the roads. People that aren't used to driving here, that aren't accustomed to our traffic patterns, our flow of things, get them off the roads, off causing mayhem on the highways, and then the motorists that need to drive every day, like us, can get to where we're going without as many issues. Like, I think
I think
that's the opportunity.
that actually makes perfect sense, and that's something that is very reasonable. I know a lot of Orlando residents, tourists from other parts of the countries, who are not used to driving, on our roads, and they have concerns, and those concerns are valid as car insurance is so high in Florida, and there's so many worries driving on those roads. It's just the fact of, are we going to expand that to include the highways? And can we even trust these self-driving cars in the first place? And Kellen, I would ask, is this something that is economically viable if we were to expand that, as the opportunity right now is for the tourist and to sort of get them off the road, so to speak.
Yeah.
But is there an opportunity viably for our economy to expand this and this be the future?
Probably. We've seen so far that they are performing in these surface roads. They're performing well. Of course, we all know highway driving is a bit of a different animal here in Orlando because of the sheer number of bottlenecks. Because I-4 in particular has several. There's one in downtown where too many people enter at the same time. There's another one right after where too many lanes end at the same time. And then there's a few, kind of like what Kevin was talking about, where a lot of people get on and a lot of people exit all at once, and there's not a lot of lanes. How it handles those bottlenecks will kind of determine how well it'll work on highways, because you're kind of right to the extent that what we have right now is a solution for once you're already deep into Orlando, you've already made it to your hotel. Then you have a solution, provided your hotel's in a good location, right? But how we can connect over highways into the airport will be really how we solve tourists. And depending on whether these Waymo taxis adapt well to the frankly ridiculous traffic on the most dangerous road in America, that'll determine whether or not this is viable. If the answer is they are adapting, great. Then we have, then that is a very good solution, because if the robotaxi can drive safer than these tourists, then that's huge for us, and it's at a good price for them. So that would be a huge thing. Now, it's not like a magic wand fix-all solution. There's still fundamental issues just in the ways that the roads are constructed and laid out. And there's definitely some work that'll need to be done there still, as well as, of course, the issues of, what other mass transit systems can we do or can we not do. But overall, this is a solid development that shows a lot of promise.
And if anybody has anything else to add, but I would like to segue into our next segment. Oh, David?
I do want to add something. Although the Waymo initial launch was for the tourist area, I see the Waymos and the robotaxi as a means of more than just transporting people. Like I was stating, food delivery, transport for those who are unable to drive, like a Uber or a Lyft, but without the human element. I personally am ready to just leave my car in the parking lot or the driveway and just, call up a robotaxi. If Waymo is cheaper, sure. But I'll call up a robo-taxi, and because I don't drive as often as most people, and take it downtown, take it to a meeting on the east side, or take it to an event in the evening, and be able to do some work in the car, relax, take a nap. Yeah, you can take a nap. It's allowable. And I just see this as a means of replacing humans. It's going to happen, but replacing more cars on the road. If you are able to just call a car, pick you up, or pick up your groceries and bring it back to you, or take you to where you need to go, and send it off, or let it sit there until you're ready to go back to where you need to go. It's cost effective.
I mean, I see all those points, and I'm somewhere in the middle because I see the potential and the opportunity. But I also have my own reservations. Yes, replacing humans. and not just affecting Uber drivers, but the corporation and other industries as well, but also, you know, becoming comfortable with the idea that robots are currently and will be the future. And it's a scary thought to have a driverless car, but it's also a scary thought to be on the road in general when it's just so crazy with so many cars, everything going on.
Yeah.
So what
They're
risk
actually
at this point?
they're actually
What is the risk at this point?
they're
So
actually safer than human drivers, Sean.
I
And
will
and
that on surface roads.
yes, on surface roads. And I'm not as cold blooded as I may seem most of the time. However, as far as the human drivers, I mean, Uber driver could purchase a robo taxi and have passive income and join the robo taxi fleet under Tesla and send out their cars from their own driveways or parking lots and
If
pick
they
up people and do all the things that we were talking about, and even create their own fleet, buy 2 or 3 of the robo taxis and just have them in the Tesla format, and just send out the cars and create passive income. So in a way, it takes away that corporate level, the Uber level, and it's just the owner of the car and the rider.
Yeah.
So
as long as they have one or can afford to finance one, then yes, that is certainly going to be an opportunity for some residents here.
Yep.
Just I don't know whether or not it'll be the same ones, but that will be an opportunity. And David's right. Like on surface level roads, these road taxis are doing just fine. Not the road taxis, the Waymos are doing just fine. A lot of times the routes are simple. It's stop at a red light, turn right when light turns green after 2 seconds, stuff like that. The only thing that would potentially be difficult is just how well we'll adapt to I-4 specifically, simply because sometimes I-4 pressures people to drive fast in the name of safety, which is unintuitive that you need to go above the speed limit for the person's safety, but people have to do it because it's so hard to transition lanes there. The question is, will it be able to make proper clearance for people, as both other Waymos and other real drivers? Because people also use it to go to Tampa, they use it to go down south. There's other uses for I-4 besides just tourists. Yeah, it's just whether or not they'll be able to make the proper clearance to make the traffic flow. And the answer is maybe.
One question I would have kind of around that particular topic with the highway transition is how it will actually adapt to like traffic laws. Because like technically speaking, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but in the state of Florida, the left 2 lanes or the left lanes are they're only passing lanes theoretically. Now, obviously, no one that's not enforced. I mean, people for the most part, cruise in the left lanes for their whole trip. But if the Waymo robotaxi is going to be on the highways, then I foresee an issue where like the slow lane is like crowded with all of these, and then the passing, and then I'm not sure how like the AI in the car is going to respond to the passing lanes.
I've done a ton of research on this, and guys, both Tesla and Google have done years, particularly Waymo, have done years and years of driving, millions and millions of miles on different types of surfaces, highway, rural, urban, and many of the concerns like the passing lane, highway driving, have been, it's part of the AI, it's part of their algorithms, and they've addressed that. And although I haven't seen a Waymo on the highway here yet, but I'm sure it's on its way.
And I think there's a reason we haven't seen them yet. It's because it is just not a safe place to test stuff that you're not already certain of. It's just not safe. Like you could stick them. Like during their testing rounds. That's why you would have seen their testing rounds here. But you could see it on somewhere like an I-75. Yeah,
I saw one on my way up. I saw it. I don't know. It wasn't Waymo, but it had like a sticker on the back that said "automated driver" or whatever.
Yep.
And it was on I-75.
I saw one on I-75 last time I went up to Tallahassee. They they do work in most highway states. Again, it's just that I-4 and like this one particular stretch of 408 are just uniquely difficult roads. I'm just curious about how well they will adapt to those two roads, because they do have unique challenges. They're the reason they're the two most dangerous highways in America. It's just whether or not they've adapted it to them, because realistically, the amount of testing they've been able to do has been limited thus far. But we'll see how their testing goes. I mean,
Don't forget there are full self-driving vehicles out there already,
right,
with owners behind the wheel. Tesla,
right,
you know,
right. They are there.
All right.
It's how well we'll do in mass.
We're becoming closer to what's the movie Meet the Robinsons? Is that
I
And-
remember Meet the Flockers
or the Jeffersons?
Jetsons, the Jetsons.
Jetsons.
Yes.
Oh yeah, the Jets.
Jetsons. But you know, we're becoming closer to the future, and I thought we'd have flying cars by now, but
We do.
They're just not very good.
No, they are good, guys. I can
flying
show you
cars
videos.
over Orlando. Do we have that over Orlando?
They are coming. Yes, they are coming.
Something like that is coming. Not the same thing, but something like it is coming.
I mean-
Basically, there's this idea of using vertical takeoff and landing technology to create. They wouldn't be cars; it'd be buses. But hey, that's still we need to have flying buses.
I don't know about that. But the
I mean-
technology is here in Orlando, and they will be testing that technology at the
State level.
Orlando airport here,
Yeah.
at the city level, at the executive airport. And then also there is a civic location in Orlando and west of I-4 that has been identified for electric vertical landing autonomous vehicles, space cars.
Yeah, this is something that the Florida state government has been pushing as a solution, and something that they've made quick clearance for. It's because it started as a piece of military technology, like a piece of extraction technology. The idea was that you could take it off, like within a city, is what these vehicles do. You could take off within a city, or when any rough obstructed conditions, you could take up, go over, land straight back at base or back on the carrier. So it's vertical. Down, goes like that. It's a series of thrusters.
Which is old technology too. I mean, the Harrier jump jet came out in like the 70s.
Yeah, that was
It
the
is-
first version of it. But these ones were, of course, they put in like a tube form, like something like a shape that is less intrinsically aerodynamic, which is kind of what we would want here as far as civilian transport. And then again, the state has been trying to make as much leeway as it can for development of the technology for civilian use here, simply because what are we going to do? Build a subway? There's water down there for most places here. So that's kind of, and the idea would also be that it would potentially make for fewer takings, because takings is kind of an issue whenever you're building any public transport or any highway. It's how much property am I going to have to buy off of people in order to actually build this project? And the nice thing about the vertical takeoff and landing vehicles is that it would be less, remarkably less, as long as they're quiet enough. And yeah, there's some testing of that going on soon. We'll see what the noise levels are like. We'll see what the pollution levels are like. We'll see what the performance is like. But definitely exciting times.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's definitely exciting to hear those developments. It's about time, I would feel.
It's cutting edge. I love it.
It's just interesting to see how this will actually, hopefully, play out in a more broad, sustainable way. And you know, I want us to look at the rail reality.
Yeah.
The Sunshine Corridor is the current darling of the county roadmap. The proposed 11-mile, $4 billion plus expansion of Central Florida's SunRail commuter system aimed at connecting Orlando International Airport, the Orange County Convention Center, the iDrive resort area, and Disney Springs. But then there's the Orange Blossom Express. This was supposed to be the lifeline for Northwest Orange County and Apopka. But since the 2022 transit tax bill, the project is essentially stalled due to a lack of funding. Um, what's going on with the railroads here? And is that even a reality? I know somebody had a development on Brightline. So let's start with was it you, Kellen, who or
It was me. Yeah,
Kevin?
yeah. So Brightline has announced that despite having record ridership, they are having significant financial difficulties. They had a financial statement that came out that said they lost more than $233 million in 2025. And they're already $5 billion in debt. And it's one of those situations where it's not because people aren't riding it, because their ridership topped 900,000 passengers in the first quarter of 2020, like in the first quarter. So people are using it. I mean, I know people that you take, especially from Miami to Orlando, like that particular main route has become pretty popular. But rail's expensive. I think that's probably the core issue with rail in like America as a whole, and Orange County and Florida in the short term, is just that the upfront cost for creating effective rail infrastructure is just so high compared to how much money is going to go into it. You know, like a lot of the countries that you've seen that have like very efficient rail networks, they set them up a long time ago and they ate the costs, decades ago. And I just think that while it would be nice to have Florida be focused on rail, because like I love the idea of rail.
Yeah.
I do think that fundamentally our infrastructure is not designed to handle
Yeah.
the reality.
And that's a lot of the challenge. Orlando has been being built since Walt Disney bought his huge big tract of land with cars in mind primarily. It did something that most cities don't do, which is put, at least at the time, was very, very novel. The idea of putting a highway in the city as the main artery of transport. A lot of cities have done it since then. Most of them haven't turned out significantly better than us in that regard. It's a difficult concept. And what you'll also see with a lot of these countries that really heavily utilize high-speed rail is that people don't really drive as much either. Most people don't own as many cars, right? They're a mainstay. You go to, let's say you go to like Berlin, right? That's a place with an incredible commuter rail network. There, most people don't ever expect to drive. They fully expect to just walk or rail there. And also worth noting, their commuter times are lower, right? They're not traveling as far. Usually they're traveling a handful of miles, like they're traveling 5 to 8, right? Because of how everything is sprawled here in Orlando, there's not really many short distances that most will be able to travel. It's either you're traveling a short distance, in which case most people don't really mind using their cars because most people have cars. And you can't walk because, keep in mind, we are the least walkable city in America. Most people can't walk where they need to go. Or you're traveling a long distance in which SunRail may make it or may not route to it. So it's a bit of a challenge. It's kind of an all or nothing thing. And if you go on all, then you're left with huge maintenance or huge worn down infrastructure. One of those two will happen. So it is a very difficult place. And to provide some background to why we needed to pass a tourist tax, a lot of the difficulties that we've had with rail in the past stems from the fact that I believe the Florida State Judiciary has decided that we cannot use our tourist development tax on that project. Our tourist development tax is basically just, taxes we bring in from tourists, and it's taxes that are required to go back into tourism. So the idea that, we're not just pocketing money for tourists, we're also putting stuff to make money in the future. That's the incentive is. But it has been decided that that money can go to attractions and go to subsidizing developments, but it cannot go to a mass transit system that is used by residents and tourists. That just wasn't something that they want us using the money for. And so even though in theory we do have the money, we could easily afford it, the legal reality is a bit too much red tape for us to easily afford it. So that's what makes this such a difficult operation.
I would like to bring up, when we're comparing cities, which is, difficult to do at times because there are so many other factors.
Right.
But what comes to mind when we're talking about like a sprawling bustle of a city, is Los Angeles. And
Yes.
LA is definitely larger than Orlando, but it has that same sprawl. And LA's metro, their transportation, um, is reportedly more efficient than ours. Um, you know,
Much
but
better than our lease, but
but
not great.
they're not great, and nothing can be perfect. People will say that New York has the best.
Pretty good.
That's to be debated on terms of quality, but
Just
but
move
New
you.
York's so different, and it's how do you when you have New York that is easily you know like that, and then you have Orlando that's just like that.
Yeah.
It's hard. You're not going into like a gridlock or where
Yeah.
mapping is different, and you're facing challenges with those longer travel times and the vast counties surrounding the main city. So is this something that can even be fixed in a city like Orlando with our own sort of sprawl like LA? And also, is Sunshine Corridor something that would be beneficial to us right now with our current budget, taxes, and sentiment?
Well,
Theoretically, we can. Yeah.
actually, it's going to be incredibly difficult, and I say that because there's two rail lines that lead to and depart Orlando. As Kevin was discussing and brought up, you have Brightline, the high-speed rail that goes from Orlando down into Miami, with many, many, many stops in between. And then there's SunRail, and that is the immediate problem for Orange County. Brightline is a private entity, privately financed. It was a program that many hoped that the state would invest in with federal funding. However, attached to those federal dollars would have been the complete responsibility for running the Bright Line. That's what we're facing immediately with SunRail. SunRail goes from, I think, what is it, Kissimmee up to DeLand or something like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't operate in the evenings. It doesn't operate on the weekends when you would think you'll want to encourage people coming into, the city, coming into other areas for, tourism, for holiday, for to take in a Magic basketball game. The state funding and the federal funding for SunRail is now going to shift to the counties who benefit from this rail line. And Orange County doesn't have the money, just doesn't. And it's going to be an incredible financial burden on Osceola, Orange, Seminole, Volusia, so forth and so on. Those counties that have some road running through it, and the county is trying to figure out how to pick up that amount, how to pick up the cost for operating SunRail at its current situation, and it's difficult. It's very difficult. The board, Orange County Board, has committed $100 million over 5 years to enhance safety and mobility for pedestrians, bicyclists, more motorists, and transit users for existing operations, not including SunRail. And with the prospect of property taxes being reduced, the revenue from property taxes being reduced, if the state legislature passes a property tax reform bill and signed by the governor, there'll be even less money for the counties. In Orange County situation, less money to pay for SunRail. So Yeah, the state, the county is looking at some significant financial obligations moving into the next fiscal year, and I just don't think we're adequately prepared to take on those issues in the new administration with a new board.
Even if we can't get the trains running, though, do we still have the buses? But then no, we go look at Link's budget, right? And for 2026, they were over $405 million. That is a 14% increase over last year. And a lot of that money is supposed to go to basic infrastructure like bus shelters and more frequent routes. But the county is still fighting supply chain issues and staffing shortages. So when we look at the budget that links, is getting a significant bump, is that actually reaching the street level? Residents are still complaining about long wait times and lack of
Yeah.
shade at stops. Where's the disconnect?
I I don't think Orlando was built for mass transit, to be honest.
It was.
I see the one circular route in the core of downtown. I see many of those buses empty. That's the free limo LYMO bus route for under links. I see buses going through neighborhoods, going up and down Cimarron and Colonial often in Orange. And I look in, and I think there's a reason why they have ads all over the buses, covering the buses, because it's very difficult to look in and see that there's barely any ridership. I don't see hordes of individuals waiting for buses as you get further and further away from the urban core. Is there a need? Of course. Maybe replace those buses with Waymos or robo taxis or smaller buses
Yeah.
Or skateboards?
or skateboards. Yes.
The,
Bikes.
yeah.
Teslas.
The issue with links, the reason it's just that it's that people don't use them as much as they, maybe you would expect them to, is just because that links is unreliable. A 20-minute ride can immediately turn into an hour-long one because there's too many stops in every route. So if they have any other mode of transport, so a lot of people just throw up their hands and call an Uber, even if they don't have a car. It's there's too few routes and too many stops with links. It's one of those things where links is almost, not to be too harsh, but it's a little half-assed, right? You have buses and they theoretically go everywhere, but it takes too long because it's not actually properly supplied. There's not enough buses because there's so much ground to cover and such little funding to go around for links. So it's either the only way it's going to get more reliable is with more funding, and without more riders, it's not getting more funding. So it's kind of caught in this loop of mediocrity and dwindling returns as fewer people ride because the situation is not improving.
I also feel like there's kind of a, like you said, there's a self-fulfilling prophecy going on with links where the people that use links are people that have to. Yeah. Like if you're using links, like I'm gonna be honest, if you're using links like reliably to go to your job, you're desperate because most people would rather drive because it's just such an inefficient system. So what this does, it means that the people on links buses are not, they don't have the money and they don't have the, like, there's a social element to this as well, I think. Like, I think there's a, I'm not going to try to say this sensitively, but pretty much there's a perception that the links is for homeless people and that's what you're going to encounter on the bus. With like the Waymos, that's a little different because you're alone. Generally there wouldn't be someone else with you in the vehicle. But I don't know if I don't think Lynx actually has that bad of a safety problem. But there's a perception of that, and that's kind of across every bus system. That's one of the huge issues that buses and like rail has across the country. But I think in Florida and in Orlando particularly, culturally, people don't want to take the bus. Like there's
Yeah.
always gonna be some resistance to that. It's not New York City. You didn't grow up here. You didn't grow up going on the subway every day. You didn't grow up growing on the municipal bus system.
Right.
People are uncomfortable with the idea of taking a bus here. So even if we present them with options, and even if they're pretty efficient, I don't think that you would change the culture of the city.
Yeah. And you're right. A lot of safety concerns with mass transit are very small when you compare it to the dangers of driving. But Americans are familiar with driving, so the calculation for most Americans ends up being one-sided, which is that you basically just focus on, okay, what are the pros and cons of the mass transit system instead of weighing it against driving. So mass transit is often a difficult sell in this country, especially in a place like Florida.
And that's where I asked, like, is there any hope at all? And that sort of lends me to, some final questions. And this has been a great discussion. I definitely want to have a more comprehensive one, but I think we've touched base on a lot of different areas, and this is something we can definitely go deeper into. But I just asked overall, does the average Orange County resident feel safer than they did even 2 years ago or a few years ago? Or is the rapid population growth outpacing the safety upgrades? Orlando is becoming a larger city, and the transportation and adapting and adjusting is just not happening. It's not matching.
Yeah.
Do
You want to
people-
start, Kevin, or do you want me to start?
I'll start. I don't really think that the safety itself is all that impacted. I think that the issues that have been here for a while, and I'm not someone that's from Orlando, so can't really speak on that. But I think in general, it's going to continue the way it has been, and the issues were there from the start. I mean, the issues with Orlando's infrastructure were from the 70s, so I don't think that the population increase isn't helping by any means, but I don't think that the actual number of people in Orange County is necessarily making it worse. It's just spreading the problem out. Because I've talked to people that they've lived in Alafaya Trail for 15 years, or people that I was speaking to someone that lived in St. Cloud, or people that lived in Kissimmee. There is a perception that these there was always a craziness in downtown Orlando and the Disney area. But there was a perception that you could live in one of the underlying suburbs and generally avoid that craziness and have a much more relaxing, less stressful commute. And I think now you're seeing, as people are moving into those cheaper areas, that the problem is just getting worse in those areas in particular.
Yeah, they found new bottlenecks. If they're not going on I-4, they're going on Narcosi, for example.
Yeah.
David and I were talking about this last night. There's a massive bottleneck has appeared there where there didn't always used to be, but it has appeared there because now there's too many residents who have to go, east for whatever reason, and they have to go through Narcosi. So they kind of had that block appear, right? Yes, you have residents, you have tourists, and oftentimes they take different routes. But those alternate routes have also become crowded. They've also become bottlenecked because everything at some point connects to downtown and redistributes. If there is hope for mass, just improved transit, not even mass transit, but just improved car transit, it'll be providing routes that go around downtown entirely, or new ways to get across I-4. Because that was another thing when Mayor Dyer, this was probably 20 years ago by now. I don't remember exactly. No, it was less than that. But they had Ultimate I-4, which expanded I-4, right? It shifted many elements of the highway, but they also knocked out a street road in the process, and they knocked out several walking routes in the process, like several great bike routes in the process, because the construction equipment had to roll over that in order to adjust the highway. So we last time we expanded I-4, we lost a lot of things. So a lot of ways to get across it were gone, and we just never replaced them for some reason. I don't know why. At least and if we did, we didn't replace them well. So we need more ways to get across I-4, or more ways to just go around downtown, for residents to just go around downtown and avoid it.
And I think you brought up some great possible solutions there. You know, my kind of wrapping up question is, what is the way forward? And is there even a way forward? Do we have the infrastructure? Do we have the capability, the wherewithal to actually do something about this? Um, that's a question that I don't know the answer to. And I'm curious, if we want to have a future with reliable buses and trains and safe roads, we have to figure out how to pay for it without breaking the trust of the people living here. We see what goes on in California and the crazy tax dollars that are poured into their, huge, expansive transportation lines, and it just does not come to fruition. Um, and the trust of the people there is lost. So I asked David, what is the most realistic path forward? Is it another attempt at a sales tax? Do we need to look at more public partnerships? What is something that we can prioritize realistically that would make the roadmap, in Orlando
Sure.
improve the lives of the taxpayers tomorrow and
Sure.
way into the future?
Well, first we have to remember that public transportation has never been a profit-making industry. So understanding that, with Orlando, my opinion would be to, when you have competent staff and commissioners and a mayor who understands this issue, who have taken the time to study this issue or have a background in this issue. We need more of those folks to look at the transportation grid as we see it now and look at where there can be enhancements, intellectual enhancements in regards to AI powered traffic signals, where everything is timed using AI to keep the flow of traffic going. We also have to look at if we're repairing streets or creating new streets, that we create them in a way that enhances the flow of traffic. There's a good example in Curry Ford and Cimarron where there used to be a right turn lane going west on Curry Ford. They took that out. You have traffic backed up with people waiting to make a right turn, but because people are wanting to go straight and there's only 2 lanes to go straight, they're stuck. So looking at traffic flow would be my first start. My first point of proceeding. Second would be looking at the grid and looking at bus lines or traffic lines where the ones that are ineffective, you take them off. You take inefficient. You take them off the schedule. You look at the ones that are busy, the one that have the most traffic. You look at enhancing the schedules. You enhance the mobility of those riders. You look at maybe creating sub hubs across the county where these sub hubs will connect to the larger hub downtown. Getting from Buffalo to the Four Corners is not going to happen in the current system. It's just, we also have to look at future capacity for industry where there's going to be a need for getting people to those industries and planning for it. We have to use the technology that's available to us, whether it's here in Orlando or across the nation or from across the world, to develop affordable transit modes without raising taxes. Get rid of the waste, get rid of the fraud, get rid of the inefficiencies first before proposing a tax increase.
Yeah, because even after eliminating all this stuff, depending on what infrastructure plan we go for, there may still need to be a tax raise, but at least it would be a much lesser tax raise, much lesser. Because right now, what we see coming from the county administration is that it would be a big tax raise if we were to really if we really put some elbow grease into this and really make some progress, it would also come at a very steep cost. But but David's right. There's potentially a lot of avenues for cutting, and this was stuff that you would expect the big four audits to notice, but they didn't. There's potential room for cutting, and that can instead go to just really solving this problem right now. And then if you want to go back and look at those things that the county's invested in back again later, fine.
Sure.
But right now we have more severe issues.
And Kevin, do you have any closing thoughts?
I think that the main way to address this is just like focusing on realism. Like I definitely, as someone that is active in like the discourse around public transportation and like follows those communities and generally follows some of the urbanist pro public transportation rhetoric, a lot of it, while well-intentioned, is not really anchored in reality. Like everyone wants high-speed rail. I mean, it's sexy, it's fun, it sounds good, but that doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. I mean, unfortunately, we have a particular structure to our country and in our state that doesn't facilitate that. It's one thing for those big northern cities that have like grid-based infrastructure. The Sun Belt, where everything was designed in the 1970s and 60s around highways, around like driving your Cadillac down the highway every morning. Like when you build the city with that in mind, and that's what you're starting from, you can't just graft this immediate situation on top of it. I mean, even like if you look at like places like Paris, I mean, anyone that's actually been to Paris will tell you that, France has great public transportation, but then you go there and it's miles and miles and miles of highways because there's a sprawl because people moved to the cities, and there's like, there's these issues that aren't just going to go away. So I think something like the Waymos is really a step in the right direction. Like I was skeptical of that stuff even a couple months ago, but as I've looked into it, as I think about the actual feasibility of that, it is realistic, and it would help accommodate a lot of the issues with traffic infrastructure in our area.
And David was right when he mentioned that we got to build for future capacity in mind. That is where a lot of our issues have come from. That's where the Paris issue came from, right? It was that when Orlando was kind of building up around Disney, and they were first building this infrastructure, they had no idea what was going to happen. And when the warning signs first started to show themselves, action wasn't taken. So at least not enough action was taken. Some action was taken. It was just kind of Band-Aid fixing. So then when the issues really showed up, a huge amount of people showed up, we were still going on infrastructure with the wrong capacity. And that's why we have such severe bottlenecks in downtown. We didn't accommodate the proper capacity. And so looking forward, anything we got to do, David's right, it needs to be possible to scale it up.
I think, Kevin, you brought up you have a very realistic, pragmatic outlook on this. And as David and Kellen shared, there are solutions to this, but we have to be realistic in the sense of we don't have that grid pattern. We don't have something that would accommodate to a lot of those pie in the sky ideas. And we have to come down to earth, come back to earth and really ground ourselves with what can we actually do, and then scale it to where we need it to be. But right now, that future of Orlando transportation is at a crossroads, and we can choose to be a city that moves its people, including tourists, or a city that just moves its tourists. And I see, Waymo is expanding. I would like to see that expansion broaden. I think this conversation has definitely softened me up to the idea of Waymo. I was a bit hesitant, and I've never ridden, in a self-driving car before, an autonomous vehicle, but I would be open to the idea because I'm not necessarily safe driving on the roads here regardless. So might as well take the risk with robot. Thank you, gentlemen. I really would love to keep talking, but we're running out of time. So I look forward to having a more in-depth conversation with this. We could talk about transportation and learn so much more for hours. Um, but that will be it for today. The King Exchange is here to make sure we keep asking those tough questions and keep pushing the boundaries and don't settle with what we're just told by our officials. We want to see innovation happen like Waymo, but we have to make sure that the people who pay the bills in this county can actually benefit from the transportation. I think that's something that we have to strike a balance and figure that out. I'm not a transportation expert. I'm not a city planner, but I'm open to realistic, pragmatic ideas that we've discussed today that can, work towards that. So thanks to David, Kellen, and Kevin for the insight today. We will continue to track any updates regarding transportation. So please look out for future episodes. We remind you as always to check out the T8020 Token community. And we will see you next time on the King Exchange.